want to welcome the governor and the commissioner and this distinguished panel to Twin Ignition Startup Garage. This is a super important initiative that the governor is going to talk about today and start to tell the story about how we as Minnesotans can also innovate, create positive economic change in our communities, and along with our big audacious goal of trying to create here at Twin Ignition 100,000 jobs in our community over the next 20 years, how the partnership between the state of Minnesota, all the startups you see here, Beta, a nonprofit, Groove Capital, a fund that funds startups, how all of this can come together in an ecosystem to help support startup entrepreneurs deliver on their dreams. So, Seth, do you want to say a couple of things?
I do. The partners in Twin Ignition found success here in Minnesota, and when we got together and talked about how can we give back to this community, what do we want to do within the community that gave us a chance, Twin Ignition is what that is, and it's a space for startups, for technology companies to come in, feel welcome, be in a community of companies that are at different stages in their early career, you might say, and to be able to find funding, to be able to find programming that helps them become a better entrepreneur. It's all happening in this tiny little community right here, and we want to see more of this happen elsewhere within Minneapolis, within Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Seth and Ben, thank you for opening up this incredible space. Some of you are hearing about this, the folks who work in here. This is not a secret to you, but one of the purposes of coming here is to highlight this ecosystem that you're talking about. And Twin Ignition Startup Garage is the place where this is happening. We talked about this as a combination of nonprofits, for-profit, government entity, all working together to create that ecosystem and opportunity for entrepreneurs and those folks that want to make a difference in the world right here in Minnesota. And I think some of you have heard us talk about this before, and half jokingly talk about it. It's kind of the Minnesota Lutheran thing. If you do something good and talk about it, it doesn't count. We need to end that. Today we're here to end that, and what we're going to talk about is, and Commissioner Grove will get into the details, this is a joint venture amongst all those groups we're talking about, and we're calling it Build What Matters. It's telling our story and creating the ecosystem and working together to make sure that people know this is truly one of the best places in the country to start a business. And we have the facts to back that up. We have the statistics to back that up. And we know that we've got a history to back that up. This is the state of Norman Borlaug and the Green Revolution. We fed the world with that innovation. This is the state that invented everything from pacemakers to hearing aids. We're the folks that pioneered open heart surgeries. We also were the place when we had a little extra time. We created ATVs, water skiing, and the Nerf football when we had time. All things that made an impact, and it's because of a combination of innovative entrepreneurial people, an ecosystem that understands that angel investment credits that are coming in, the state creating things, and creating a great place to live. People know about our 10,000 lakes. People know about that we have one of the highest standards of living. People know that we have some of the best public schools. And I'll tell you, over the last year and a half, people in Minnesotans actually know we came to grips with some of the things we know we can do better on. We know there's issues in systemic racism that needed to be addressed, and those things are happening. So that when we start telling this story, building what matters and building what matters for families is a place to go out and sell it, not just to other states. I watch states use COVID relief money to try and poach jobs from neighboring states. That is an absolute loser proposition. The idea is, how are you going to create new things in that space, and how are you going to attract people here? We're planning on attracting the rest of the world. Commissioner Grove, I, and many of these leaders that you're going to hear from that have done this work, we'll be traveling to the UK and Finland here shortly to make this case. Finland, their ambassador, their minister of trade, and others were just here. They recognized and are point blank saying it. Minnesota and Finland have so much in common. Both places that punch above their weight, both places that are innovative. We have similar climates. We know here, we're building to be resilient to climate change. We're building to do those things that we know are coming. And they're saying we want to partner with a place that shares our values. And that's the exciting part of this. So as the world starts to look at what does work look like post-COVID, We want to say it looks just like it looks in Minnesota, an incredible place to start your business. One that Commissioner Grove will tell you is, if you start a business in Minnesota as compared to the other 49 states, your chance of survival is greater here than any place else. And we're just getting started. So Build What Matters is our campaign of working together. The folks you're going to hear from in just a minute have already built what matters and are planning on building further. And the folks that some of you behind the cameras back there who work in this space are that next generation. They may be the next Fortune 500, but they may be that successful mid-sized to small company that's creating jobs and changing the world in a niche that they fill here. We want to make sure the state of Minnesota is good partners with them. So this is work that Commissioner Grove has done for a long time. It's the work that him coming out of this ecosystem, if you will, as it was starting to be built, and now talking about how do we make it a reality here in Minnesota by building on and standing on the shoulders of giants who are already doing it. That's what we're here for today. So Commissioner Grove.
Great, thanks, Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. Ben, Seth, thank you. We're thrilled to be here. It's the perfect spot to launch this campaign, and we are optimistic. I mean, the past couple of years have been challenging in the world. They've been challenging in Minnesota. The entrepreneurs and business leaders and workers that you meet will tell you they face challenges they never knew they would encounter. But there's a lot of reason for optimism. There's a lot of reason to celebrate, and there's a lot of reason to lift up a very innovative, a very resilient, and a really strong economy here in Minnesota. And that's kind of the purpose behind what we're here to do today. The entrepreneurs and leaders you'll hear from today are building an economy on the backs of extraordinary legacy. Minnesota has really always been a state that has punched above its weight. It is really one of the great success stories in the American economy. The governor mentioned many innovations that have been invented and launched here. We're in a technology space, so I'll add to that list. This is the state that really pioneered the supercomputing revolution that completely changed technology and medical technology in particular. We're now the #1 place in the country for medical patents and medical devices. I know Medical Alley is here with us today. So this Build What Matters idea, founded in that idea that this is the state that has the best 5-year business survivability rate, as the governor said, of any state in the country, is rooted in the sense that people pick things that they care about, they create companies to tackle those challenges, and they make them succeed. So that's kind of at the foundation of the campaign. You may ask, why are we doing this now? This is a really important moment to have this message in a forward-leaning orientation for Minnesota. It feels like in so many ways economies and states and countries have been reacting to so many challenges that have come to us in the past couple of years. We now need to be proactive, and it's obvious why, but just to remind us all, we face an extraordinary workforce challenge in Minnesota, a challenge that our neighboring states face as well. If we aren't out there pitching our state to others, saying, hey, come here, come be a part of an amazing growing economy here, then we aren't really in the game. So we have to be leaning forward on that front. We're also in the middle of a time when kind of the whole economy is rethinking what work looks like and where they want to be and what they want to do. There's tremendous mobility. Over half of Americans are saying they're going to quit their jobs and do something new. There's just a lot of fluidity in the economy. We want Minnesota to be leaning forward. And again, we're here to Startup Garage because when disruption happens, when a pandemic or something like it hits, new business starts go up. People start new stuff. They want to take on new challenges. They want to do new things. We want them to do that here in Minnesota. Minnesota is a place that has always been a spot for homegrown companies. You see that everywhere. And I think we, as the governor said, don't want to rest on our laurels or on our history. We want to be proactive. We're going to tell the story of what's good here, what's challenging here. We want to lift up examples of people tackling the challenges we do face in Minnesota. But we also don't want to hesitate from celebrating and being optimistic. So we're thrilled to have some business leaders with us today that will share that message with you far better than your government can. We're thrilled to have them with us. We're going to kind of take advantage of the fact that we're in a startup space and use kind of a pitch format, if you will. There's no winner. We're not going to select a winning startup or what have you. But we're going to kind of take that format. And we've asked our participants today to pitch the state of Minnesota to us, to all of us, to hear why they think Minnesota is a great place for business. We'll hear from Anila Idnani, who is the co-founder and design lead for Habitaware, a great startup in Minnesota. Anila? Yeah. After Anila, we'll hear from Dave Doherty, who is the CEO of DigiKey in Thief River Falls. Yeah. We will then hear from Brett Carter, who is the Executive Vice President at Excel Energy. He runs their customer and innovation efforts. Guiding cleanup for us is Mary Sharuti from the Walker Art Center, who runs the Walker Art Center. So let's dive in. Neil, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Governor Walz and Commissioner Grove and attendees for this honor of sharing why the Minnesotan way of life is great for business. My name is Anila Adnani, and I am a first-generation South Asian American-born, and I'm raised from the Big Apple. My husband, Samir, and I moved here to the Mini Apple 10 years ago for a corporate work opportunity. When we drove through Uptown for his final interview, I knew this is home. While work brought us here, what kept us here is the culture, the quality and affordability of life, and the people. Minnesotans value relationships over money and enjoying nature over consuming things. They are active and activists. When I first moved to make friends and to get better at my then job in advertising, I attended tech and startup meetups. Like the art, music, and food scenes here, the vibe was bumping and the events were accessible. Tickets were available, parking was available, and people, most importantly, were available to connect and build lasting relationships. That eventually opened the doors as my husband and I developed Habitaware, which is a mental health tech company and a Time Magazine Best Invention. It's been such an inviting community that has supported our entrepreneurial journey in the making of our smart bracelet that helps people build awareness and take control of compulsive and debilitating hair pulling, skin picking, and nail biting. We stay because Minnesota's entrepreneurial ecosystem made starting a business tangible. We stay because we've seen this ecosystem grow thanks to the dedicated support from the state, and we know it can become so much better, and I'm truly proud to be part of that process as a Launch Minnesota advisor. And finally, we stay because it's easy to live here. We've built our village and found a great school that meets the needs of our children as well as us as working parents. And it's been a great place to build a business, to build a family, and to build the life I've always wanted. The life we want. The change to our life brought on by COVID has everyone rethinking what is most important. For those of us who choose the path of building and living what matters, Minnesota is our true north.
Yeah.
Brent Muir, would you like to go next? My name is Dave Doherty, and I'm the president of DigiKey, and I bring an outsider's perspective as well. Like Neil, I came from the East Coast and have lived in some more suburban areas to cities like Boston or Dallas or Denver before finding my way to Thief River Falls, a community 300 miles northwest of Minnesota that I didn't know you could still stay in the U.S. and be that far. But the reputation of the Twin Cities is unprecedented. It's without dispute. You look at the number of Fortune 500 companies, et cetera, but that's not the only secret of Minnesota. There are areas outside that are equally opportunistic. Matter of fact, it's appropriate that we're talking about startups. Our company, DigiKey, I wish we had a location like this. Our founder started it as dorm room at the University of Minnesota, brought the company back to Thief River Falls, where we're a distributor of electronic components. We're now spawning that next generation of innovation, shipping over 600,000 customers, and I was pleased to see that this watch contains some of those components to spawn the innovation of new companies. Half of our shipments go outside the U.S., but all leave a warehouse in Thief River Falls. You know, about 6 years ago, we looked at an expansion requirement, and it was a foregone conclusion it would have to be outside of our home area. We looked at locations, but when push came to shove, we said, this is the heartbeat of our company. This is its origin, this is its strength. And while some folks unfortunately have to face that prospect of a heart transplant, no one does it voluntarily. So we stayed there, and thank goodness we did, surviving ridiculously strong growth years in 2018 and again today that couldn't have happened without that commitment of our workforce, many of which should have been there 30, 40 years plus. When we talk about the quality of the workforce, successful companies can only succeed with successful workforces. And I have to tell you, with a little trepidation coming to such a rural area with the family, we wondered what would it be like. And it's exceeded all of our expectations. Now, what are the trade-offs? Instead of living in a major city where potentially you're hiring coaches to get your kids through their ACT tests or AP preparation, it's committed, dedicated local teachers in our school systems that volunteer their time on the evening, on the weekends, and whether it's to help kids graduate or help prepare for future endeavors.
I'm invested in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so in closing, it's the combination of what Anil's talked about. It's an environment and it's the people here. And it's that commitment. I've never been in an area where people feel that commitment to service, and our brand is about service, and we couldn't do it anywhere else in the country other than here. So what do we miss being up north? Well, I think the epitome of success in many urban areas is how do I get to take advantage of Mother Nature, as you talked about? And how do I time that to avoid the stress of traffic? Well, for me, what I'm giving up is that commute, because it's 100 feet out my back door to the Thief River where we can pontoon in the summertime or snowmobile in the wintertime. The only thing that we need is to create the environment that allows for continued growth, to market the success, build the infrastructure required so we don't slow down. Because growth is the one single element that truly floats all boats. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
So I'm Brett Carter, and I'm an EVP with Xcel Energy. We're one of the many Fortune 500 companies that are located right here in Minnesota. And I'll tell you, the collaboration that we get from the other Fortune 500 companies here to help build a much more robust environment is one of the best things that we've seen. And there's a little bit of a competitive edge to it. It's one of the things that led Xcel Energy to announce as one of the largest utilities in the country that wanted to be 100% carbon-free by 2050. And that we're on target to accomplish that. By 2030, 80% of the energy produced in Minnesota will be carbon-free. And by the end of 2020, our customers were receiving over 50% of their energy from carbon-free resources. It's that kind of innovation that just creates the kind of environment that organizations and companies like these can really grow in. The most important thing is that we are willing to invest in startups. We love innovation. We love innovative ideas. And so we have a whole business development arm that is focused on how we can create a much more robust business environment from the very smallest to the very largest. We love being here in Minnesota. I will tell you, I moved here about 3 years ago. I moved a 10th grader, which I'm told is not always the best thing to do. But he thrived so well in the public school system here that he was able to run off to a college that I never thought he'd have a chance to get into. The school systems here are great. We have an unbelievable amount of hard-working, educated resources that we can tap into. And yes, it gets competitive, but honestly, I think that even plays out better for the employees that are right here in Minnesota. So I will say that it's wonderful being here in Minnesota. It's wonderful to have a state that is supportive and investing in small businesses and startups to this level. I've never seen it anywhere else. I've lived in Pittsburgh, I've lived in Charlotte, and I will tell you that Minnesota, hands down, has the environment that's going to allow for a thriving environment for all levels of companies, and obviously having the most Fortune 500s per capita gives us the foundation that we need to help grow these businesses right here in Minnesota. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you, Governor and Commissioner Grove. I'm happy to be here. I came to Minnesota in 2019 to become the director of the Walker Arts Center. I had spent 20 years in New York and 10 years in San Francisco before that, but I grew up in Cleveland, so I know a little bit about the Midwest. And coming to take on this position was a huge honor for me. Because the Walker is so highly respected globally as a place that platforms the leading creative artistic voices of the moment. And I had only been to Minnesota once before I took this job, and that was in the mid-90s for the wedding of my college roommate, and it took place in the sculpture garden, and it was magical. So then, now that, coming back and living here, of course the garden is still magical and was super important, I think, for many during the pandemic as a place to sort of be around art and have that aesthetic experience in, a socially distant way, or at least physically distant, not socially. But I think that what I've learned is that that sense of wonder and connection and magic in the sculpture garden actually extends to the whole landscape of Minnesota. And I think to this point about accessibility, I don't want to, I feel a little bit bad, but nature is accessible to us too. And I think one of the amazing things is that we have such a rich ecosystem of cultural organizations around the state, from regional theaters to small culturally specific dance companies to orchestras to major museums of art, science, history. So we have all of this access, and part of that is, I think, because Minnesotans aren't just passive consumers of culture, but they're really active participants. There was a study that came out, I believe, in 2019 that cited 74% of Minnesotans said they'd attended a cultural event within the past year. This is pre-COVID times. But that compares to 54% of the rest of the national population. And what does that say? To me, that says that's a level of participation that speaks to a population that's both creative and curious and engaged. And I don't think I'm the only employer that seeks people that are creative, curious, and engaged. So I think that's a measure of the people that we have here in Minnesota in terms of our workforce. We are also the only state in the union, I'm pretty sure, that values culture so much that it's written into our state constitution. So with the Legacy Amendment, art and culture, as well as stewardship of our environment and our natural resources, are something that this population values so much that we put it in our constitution and are willing to pay taxes to support that. And that makes for a very high quality of life here, as people have already addressed. But I also would point out that since I arrived at the Walker, I've been hiring senior leaders in all different types of positions at the Walker, and I've recruited people from New York, Boston, Berlin, Vancouver, and someone just arrived from Istanbul last week. So they've lived in some pretty awesome places, and they came to Minnesota and are super happy to be here. We've been able to attract that kind of talent, and I think part of the attraction is all the things that we also said, that others have said, but I think that there's also a recognition that we have an opportunity. I think it's the scale of this accessibility that's created, but also that we recognize what we need to work on, as Governor Walz said. And I think this idea that, the world is watching us in terms of issues around equity, inclusion, how we are going to get along as a city, as a civic society. And I think that I've been really proud of the work I've done, and with colleagues, both in the cultural sector, but also across nonprofit, for-profit, the collaborative nature and the way people are leading in to address what we need to work on has been really impressive, and I've been really proud of the way my colleagues have sort of stepped up to meet the moment. I think Minnesota is really prepared to meet the moment, and so I think it's exciting. I think it's a moment of opportunity, and I think people are really looking forward to it.
Well, as we knew, no one could say it better than the folks that are actually doing it. And I too want to echo this sentiment. Now is our moment to build what matters, to create the state, the society, and the inclusive community that we want. As you look around and you see these signs, and I talk about this often and rattle them off, the #1 in the nation for 5-year business survival rate, #1 in Fortune 500 per capita, #1 in medical device patents per capita, #1 in health technology cluster, #1 in ACT scores, #1 North American port at Duluth, all those things. #2 best state to live in, damn Hawaii. So we can't compete with that. But these things matter. But you have my pledge that never will we gloss over the things where we need to do better. Until every community, until every black family feels welcome and safe, we have work to do. Until every child who goes to school gets the same opportunity and has the same ability to achieve, we won't rest. It is not mutually exclusive. When I talked about One Minnesota, it's not the belief that we're all the same, but we work across differences to improve all of our lives together. We have to end this idea that there is something inherently different about greater Minnesota and the metro area. That is a zero-sum proposition that gets us nowhere. Minnesotans are stronger because of this strong, diversified economy, and we want to make the message very clear. All are welcome here. Equitable and inclusive communities are our vision. Come here and love the person you love. Come here and do the job that you want to do. Come here and be respected for who you are. That's the state that we can be, and we have so many building blocks in place. This campaign is to get out there and tell that. Tell it to the world. I'm excited about when we'll be in Finland, and going in November seems right for a Minnesotan to go to Finland, and that's the time we go. But they're interested in this place. They're watching, and they're watching how we address our weaknesses, but how we build on our strengths. And those strengths are something that we're here to highlight too. So just grateful for all of you, excited about this. Watching this come from winning the competition to doing it, it's amazing. I'm just in awe of what can happen. And I know it comes from the spirit of people, but you need to be in a space and an ecosystem and a community and a state that nurtures that. That's what we're trying to do. And again, thank you to Ben and Seth. You are the microcosm of what we want to do. The people here are going to be the people telling that story when their companies go off and run. And that ability to be able to live and work in the community of your choice, whether that's Uptown, whether that's Thief River Falls, whether that's Mankato, so many of us, whether our families were indigenous to this state or we came, so many of us, like my wife and I as a young teacher, saw Minnesota as that North Star, saw as an opportunity. And to be very honest with you, living in the Midwest and looking around, who valued teachers and who valued education, there was no question in our mind, it was Minnesota. And that's something that we need to continue to build on, and we will. So we're grateful. Be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, great. Well, I think we have a couple of minutes for a bit of a roundtable discussion, maybe before we go to questions from the press. You've heard each other, you've heard the governor. We're looking for advice from all of you who are out there doing the work every day. Are there specific insights that stick out as the governor and I and others are pitching companies to come into the state, pitching entrepreneurs to start companies here? Any misconceptions about Minnesota or things that you would elevate as uniquely right now important for us to highlight as we pitch the state?
I think the one comment that I would make is I commend the effort that's taken place. You're the tip of the spear. We're not going to totally rely on you. I think we've got to look for each community to step up and build on what you're starting, because we all have a sense of responsibility. The local chambers, the local communities, because we're all in this together.
One of the things that I heard you loud and clear on is just the diversity aspect and the welcoming environment. And we had an incident here that really, I think, put a bad mark on this area. But the fact is that that's not Minnesota. And so the business community has rallied around the issues that you talk about that need to be focused on. I felt it. I know I've leaned in. I've been a huge part of the community and trying to ensure that the equity is spread across all socioeconomic realms. And so I'm just saying, I really appreciate what I've seen since I've been here in terms of rallying to support the communities that need it the most. And so I thank you for that.
Neela or Mary, things that stick out that you guys have?
I really love what Mary said about the world is watching us. And to call ourselves the problem-solving capital of America and the world, and to say equity is a problem, lack of equity is a problem, and to say we're going to face it head on, I think is very commendable. And to acknowledge that, yes, Minnesota's a great place to live for a lot of people, but not yet for a lot of people. So we have to fix that, and I appreciate that is known and voiced and on the table.
Absolutely. I want to be very cognizant how I talk about that, because when we talk about this great state, the things that are happening, I know there's folks out there listening that say, but not for me. And we have to get over that. I want families across this country, no matter what their background is, wherever they're at, to say, where would I like to settle? I want them to say, I want to settle in Minnesota, because those people get it and care. The opportunity for us to face decades, if not centuries, of systemic racism head on gives us an opportunity to set a new course. It gives us an opportunity while the world's watching to say, yeah, that happened, but they're not settling to say that's what has to be. What can be is what we're trying to get at. So I hope that we're getting into this where we can simultaneously talk about our successes while making sure we're bringing everybody up along with us. And that's going to be an important part of telling this story.
Yeah, no question. Mary, insights from you as you've heard others talk? And
I guess I was just going to come back to this idea about competitiveness and collaboration. And I think that combination, I've been really struck by. I feel like arriving in Minnesota, and I was talking a little bit about the scale of the place, that it's big enough that there's a lot of diversity and vibrancy and precision, but there's also access. And I have found that as a nonprofit leader, you're not always invited in the room with the corporate executives or the business community. And in Minnesota, that is actually, I often
Yes.
find myself in spaces that are part nonprofit, part corporate, and so that those communities really work well together here, and with the government as well. I mean, I think that those partnerships are, I think, have been quite vibrant. And of course, we're a little competitive, you can tell, and that's part of what makes it great. But I think it's also that collaborative nature that I have found here. I mean, I found New Yorkers very collaborative, and I love living in New York, but I think it's at a different level here.
It is so true. I used to say this all the time as a member of Congress. I would talk about how we did things in Minnesota, and some of my colleagues would roll their eyes and go, oh, it's Mayberry apparently there. Everybody gets, for some of you younger folks, an idyllic community where everybody got along. That wasn't the point I was making, the collaboration of that. And I'll tell you, we saw it firsthand during the pandemic that our hospital systems are independent entities. They work themselves, and they are competitive even in a healthcare realm. None of that played into it. They collaborated together, and now Minnesota was the only state that had something called a critical care coordinating center, a C4, where all the hospitals know where all the other beds are, and if somebody needs one, it's one call to the state health department and they get the beds. I talk to other states, and they're like, oh my God, that's a great idea. FEMA is now trying to implement this on a federal level where we have a site picture into wherever our hospital bed. That was because of the collaboration amongst competitors in that space. And that same thing happened. Mary talked about when folks come together. When I first had the privilege of doing this job, we tried to address homelessness for the winter of 2019. And we set a goal where the nonprofit community, if we could get a matching amount of money, if we could get $1 million raised, they would match that. We had 30 days to do it. We had $10 million in 7 days, and they doubled it after that. All with the idea of getting people out of the cold. It wasn't a long-term fix. It didn't address the systemic issues of homelessness, but it was a sense of the business community, the nonprofits, the church community, all coming together. And so I think this is all part of this. Build what matters. Build community that matters. Build community where everyone's valued. Build community that when we have weaknesses, we're not afraid to take them on, and give the opportunities for these entrepreneurs to thrive. Because if someone wants to get a good paying job and continue to live in Thief River Falls, DigiKey gives them that. If they want to do that in Uptown, they get those opportunities. And so we're just grateful.
We are. Yeah, I'm really struck by the purpose-driven nature of this economy. I grew up in Minnesota. My wife Mary and I moved here from Silicon Valley 3 years ago. And of course, the Valley is home to a lot of innovations and great companies. But a lot of the time spent in the Valley is figuring out how to grab your attention on a mobile phone to distract you for as long as they possibly can throughout the day. And when we came here, we thought, well, what's the startup ecosystem going to look like in Minnesota? And it's companies that are tackling very real challenges that are changing and saving lives, many of them based here in Clear Mission. So with that idea, I think that it's just very fundamentally true to our ecosystem that people take on challenges that really matter, not just to them personally, but to our society. And this is such a critical few years of time for us. In these next few years, the companies that are started here in this disruptive period, the innovations that we engage in are going to define the next 20 or 30 years of this economy. It is such a unique crucible of time. There's money coming from the federal government. There's money we need to spend wisely. We've got to invest in that kind of growth if we're going to differentiate ourselves. So this campaign is really just meant to be the platform for all of that. It's the businesses and leaders in this room that are going to animate it, but we want to do our part to put that front door out there, as you say, to be a welcoming spot for the state. Well, I think with that, before we take questions, I did just want to say a couple of quick thank yous. First of all, to the Minnesota Marketing Partnership. It's a collection of marketing organizations across Minnesota that have come together to help us launch this campaign. Over 20 organizations. They've given time, money, effort. We're very thankful for them and their efforts across the state. And I also want to take a moment just to thank our team at Deed who put a lot of work into this. Jen Gates, our comms director, Laura Wingy, our creative director, I know Catalina Valencia, our business development director, Neil Mulgar, who runs Launch Minnesota, and my partner in crime in the Commissioner's Office, Kevin McKinnon, all worked very hard on this campaign. I just want to give them a round of applause. And Emma, are we going to take questions here? Is that
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do on-topic questions, and then we can close the event. And if there are any on-topic, we'll move to
Great.
off-topic. We'll do that.
That's when you know you did a good job. Well done. Well, thank you all. I would just close by saying I think this point is really well taken. We're partners. We're one partner at this table. We need Minnesotans to talk about this, and I can't stress enough about talking about the great stuff we have here and changes without in any way dismissing or minimizing those issues that we have challenges on and need to work on. We're willing to do that, but that is true of every place. This is going to be a state where we take on those challenges, we solve them, and as you heard here, this is a problem-solving state, and that's exactly what we're doing. So my pitch is come to Minnesota and you'll find the life that you could hope for, and we'll be here to make sure that you stay. So thank you all. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks for your time. It's really great. I think Steve's right here.